He bet $1 million that no one, absolutely no one, could tame that horse. And I get it. If you saw that animal in person, if you looked into its eyes, you'd understand why. That wasn't just a horse. It was a storm bottled up in flesh and muscle, rage pounding under its hide like a war drum. They said he bucked off Olympic champions, crushed ribs of seasoned riders, and shattered the pride of anyone foolish enough to step into that pen. No one had ever lasted more than 10 seconds. Not one. So yeah, $1 million seemed like easy money. Until that day. Until I saw something that made every person in that crowd go dead silent. It wasn't strength. It wasn't technique. It wasn't even experience. What happened that day didn't make sense to anyone, until you looked deeper. He didn't charge in like the others. He didn't wear a flashy outfit or carry a whip or try to show off for the cameras. No, he stepped in quiet. Calm. Like he wasn't there to fight the horse, but to meet it. And I swear to you, I watched that beast, snorting, stomping, wild-eyed, freeze in its tracks the moment the kid got close. Like time hit pause. Like it remembered something it had never lived. The crowd held its breath. The owner? He laughed, of course. He thought it was a fluke. Thought the storm just hadn't hit yet. But it wasn't a fluke. It wasn't luck. Something was happening, something I don't think anyone could explain at that moment. Because the boy, this kid nobody knew, didn't try to dominate the horse. He sat there, quiet, waiting. And somehow that wild creature, the same one that had sent grown men to the hospital, stepped forward and lowered its head. I was there. I saw it with my own eyes. And I'm telling you what happened next, it changed the way I see everything. That day wasn't just about a horse and $1 million bet. That day tore open something deeper, something raw, unspoken, buried beneath years of ego, money, and pain. Because while the whole world came to watch a battle, what we witnessed instead was surrender. Not from the boy. From the horse. But what did he do? What made that horse stop fighting? And why did a silence fall over the arena like someone had cut the air with a knife? Stick around, because what you're about to hear will make you question everything you thought you knew about power, connection, and the quiet strength that can break even the wildest of spirits. Hey, before we dive into this story, I just want to say, thank you. Seriously. Thanks for being here, for taking the time to listen. It means a lot. If you're into real stories that shake you to the core, hit that like button and subscribe to Victims of Nature. You won't believe what happened that day, and trust me, you'll want to stick around to hear every second of it. Now let me take you back and explain how that unforgettable moment really went down. He isn't a name you'd recognize. He's not a celebrity, not a champion cowboy, just a kid from a neighborhood where horses are as rare as hope. He grew up watching used car lots and concrete sidewalks more than fields and fences. But there was something in his eyes, something calm, curious, electric, like he carried an understanding that so many adults forgot to nurture. His skin was dark and his frame lean, carved by long walks and the kind of determination you only find in someone who's never had much yet believes they can have everything. He never talked much about his past. Nobody knew that his father left when he was a toddler, leaving his mom to raise him alone. Nobody knew that he'd spent endless evenings in a cramped apartment, tracing dreams outside the window, watching dust motes dance where fields should have been. The arena wasn't built for kids like him. It was polished, grand, built for spectacle and power. Giant floodlights cast harsh glows on bleachers packed with wealthy onlookers who talked more about odds and bank accounts than breathed. A silver platform stood in the center, spotless except for the one horse standing there now. Massive, muscles rippling like a storm cloud, eyes burning with intelligence and defiance. Every inch of that beast screamed challenge. Money men were whispering wagers, nudging each other, refusing to blink. They were ready to bet $1 million that the boy would fail. They didn't notice him as he entered. He walked with a quiet dignity, shoulders steady even though his heart pounded like a war drum in his chest. He was small in comparison to the arena, but he didn't seem to notice, or maybe he did, but he carried his own gravity. The boy's name would only matter later. For now, he was someone who listened. He watched the horse's muscles twitch, saw its tail swish in impatience, felt its breath in the air like a warning. The crowd expected fireworks, a flamboyant display, whips, shouts, dramatic flair. He carried neither. He carried nothing but his own silence and an old-style Western saddle that looked out of place. There had been whispers that he couldn't ride, that he was just a show. Some even said he was there to lose cheaply, to make the billionaire owner look bigger in front of the world. He didn't care. He'd learned early that no one sees you until you do something unexpectedly real. And this moment begged for something real. The other riders were polished. Leather chaps, designer boots, grins sharp enough to cut. They swagged around, showing off. They made jokes about the kid, about his shirt and shoes. They cracked expensive whiskey, calling bets loud as church bells. But the boy stayed to the edge, watching. He watched the rich men lean in close, betting against him before he even spoke. He watched the horse settle its weight, shifting hoof to dirt, a low rumble vibrating in the stall beneath its skin. And he didn't flinch. Because when your world is small, fear gets a different shape. When life grows on cracked sidewalks and borrowed time, real danger shrinks to things like forgetting your dreams or letting shame win. This was bigger, yes, but the boy had survived smaller storms that broke older men. His mother had taught him something that echoed here now: to tame something wild, you don't yell. You breathe. She said it softly before bedtime when the world felt heavy and unfair. He remembered that voice now, distant but steady, as he tied his boots and stood at the edge of that $1,000,000 bet. He had no intention of mocking the horse's spirit. He had no intentions of winning applause. He just wanted to do what his mother taught: breathe, connect. He'd seen horses up close only once, during a school trip to a park, standing oh so still as the ranger spoke. The horse wept tears when the ranger left, real wet tears running down its cheeks. The boy watched, heart twisting like tangled wire. He had tended birds after storms and ran after hurt dogs on streets, so he knew when pain spoke without words. He felt the storm in this animal and wondered if he could calm it. No one knew what plan he carried in his head. He didn't tell a soul. He didn't need to. His mind was a quiet place bracing for noise. He moved forward under the heavy lights, boots crunching dirt, sweat blooming at the back of his neck. Everything slowed. The crowd leaned in. The owner's smirk stretched too wide. He'd never been surprised before. But something about how the boy looked back, no arrogance, no plea, just something deeper, made him hesitate. Was this kid ignorant? Or brave? Or did he know something everyone else didn't? In that moment, time did funny things. The horse's ears flicked, nostrils flared. The boy raised his hand, not to show power, but to signal peace. The world held its breath. And the boy inched closer, voice low and soft, though no one heard his words over the roar of thoughts in their heads. Was he praying? Singing? Talking? Who could tell? But the horse blinked. Pause. A crack in its armor. The boy stopped. They faced each other. A silent agreement made without eyes, without voice. The horse's head dipped, just a fraction. Eyes locked. That flicker was enough to make the rich crowd lean forward, their bets momentarily suspending between hope and doubt. Slowly the horse exhaled. No one spoke. No one moved. Because in that frozen second something changed. A shift in power so subtle it broke deeper than blunt force ever could. But what was it that the boy did? How did he break through centuries of fear and muscle with a look, a breath, a silent offer of trust? He began to learn as a child that trust was born in moments like this. Cracked glass cured by careful hands. And in those long seconds, standing in the dirt against the night's bright lights, he built that bridge. That's why he was there. That's why he'd risked stepping into a storm no one wanted to tame. Because he believed that connection could conquer chaos. But could it? Could it survive the roar of challenge ahead? Could he hold it together when every eye turned calculating and the world asked for a fall? He didn't know. And neither did anyone in that arena. But he had to try. And whatever happened next, it would change everything. Under the weight of 1,000 eyes, the boy stepped into the center of the arena, each boot fall sinking slightly into the compact dirt, his breath steady but low, barely enough to fog the air. The temperature felt strange, cold air wrapped in a tension so thick it could choke. The noise of the crowd had dulled, not because they were silent, but because something about the moment demanded more from their senses than sound. People leaned forward, gripping the railings, whispering to themselves, eyes fixed not on the boy, but on what they feared would come next. The horse stood still for now, watching him. Ears alert. Muscles tight. A coil of power and memory, waiting to decide if the figure before it was threat or salvation. No one moved. Not the owner, whose smug confidence had started to crack. Not the announcer, who clutched his mic but dared not speak. The cameras were rolling, of course they always were, but they captured more than just a contest. They recorded a moment so precise it felt sacred. And the boy kept walking, slow, methodical, as though approaching something not dangerous but misunderstood. The first real shift came not from the horse but from the boy. He stopped just short of the pen's inner circle and crouched, his hand brushing the ground. Not to signal control. Not to prepare a leap. He was listening again to the dirt, the pulse of the earth under hoof, the rhythm of tension vibrating through the soles of his boots. Then he rose and did something no one expected. He turned his back. For 3 whole seconds he gave the horse his spine, an act that to anyone who knew animals like this bordered on madness. But it wasn't recklessness. It was something else entirely. And the horse, trained to defy, to strike at weakness, did not charge. It blinked once, then twice, its ears twitching to the rhythm of something it couldn't define. Confusion flickered in its eyes. And slowly, the boy turned back to face it, his hands empty, his stance neutral, the very opposite of every rider that had come before him. Then came the moment no one could make sense of. The boy began to hum. Not loudly. Not theatrically. A soft, low vibration in his throat, barely audible beyond the space between them. It wasn't a tune anyone recognized. It wasn't meant for anyone but the horse. And something in that sound, a frequency, a calmness, a familiarity, stopped the beast's hooves mid-shift. The air tightened. The tail stilled. The pupils of the animal expanded ever so slightly, like it was reaching through memory trying to understand why that sound, that strange, quiet tone, felt like something it had always known. The boy kept humming. And that's when it happened. The horse moved. Not a leap. Not a rear or stomp. It stepped forward. Just once. One hoof sunk into the dirt closer than before. The kind of movement that made the whole arena collectively freeze. It was subtle. If someone had blinked, they would have missed it. But those watching knew. The impossible had cracked. The boy didn't flinch. He took a breath, not in victory but to stay grounded, and waited. Another hum. Another step. Until the gap closed enough that they stood only a few feet apart, the kind of distance that had sent every other competitor flying in the past. But now the horse's breathing had shifted. Slower. Less charged. More aware. What no one knew, what only the boy carried, was that the humming wasn't random. It wasn't even meant to be a melody. It was something his grandmother used to do when holding injured animals in her lap years ago, when he was just a toddler hiding behind her apron. It wasn't a song, it was a rhythm. A breath pattern. A signal of peace. And somehow, somewhere along the line, that horse had heard it too. Maybe not from her. But from someone who once offered it kindness, long before cruelty had taken root in its life. And that memory, buried in instinct and pain, answered back. But the test wasn't over. A whip cracked behind them. Not from the boy, but from someone on the sidelines. A foolish, impatient trainer who thought the scene was staged, who believed it had gone on too long. That sharp sound tore through the stillness like a gunshot. The horse reared, screamed, hooves clawing the air. The arena erupted in chaos. Security rushed. Spectators yelled. The boy stood his ground, barely moving, eyes wide not with fear but recognition. He knew that pain. The sudden panic. He knew what it meant to feel safe 1 second and betrayed the next. The horse's hooves landed inches from him, breath hot and violent. One wrong twitch and this would end in blood. But the boy didn't back up. He stepped forward. One step. Just one. It was enough. The horse's panic cracked like glass. It didn't attack. It didn't flee. It stared, panting as if looking for a reason not to lose control. The boy whispered now, not humming, not speaking loud, but just enough for the horse to hear. Words nobody else caught. But they worked. Slowly the horse's head dipped again. Legs steadied. Breathing slowed. And in a move that no one dared predict, the horse leaned forward and touched its forehead to the boy's chest. The arena fell silent again. No cheers. No applause. Just awe. As if the earth itself needed a second to process what it had seen. A storm calmed by a whisper. $1 million wall shattered not by domination, but by presence. The owner stood frozen, jaw slack, unable to form a sentence. The cameras zoomed in. The world watched as something shifted. More than money, more than pride. A truth laid bare in front of everyone, undeniable and raw. The horse had chosen the boy. Not out of submission, but out of something far deeper. Recognition. The boy reached up and gently placed his palm against the horse's neck. No ropes. No force. Just contact. And the horse didn't flinch. It accepted. Trusted. And in that moment the crowd finally remembered how to breathe. But questions still hung in the air like fog refusing to lift. How did a boy with no pedigree, no status, no training, do what the finest riders couldn't? What was it about him? His voice, his presence, that reached through walls no one else could break? And more importantly, why did the horse choose him? The air didn't shift immediately. After the moment passed, after the horse rested its head against his chest and the crowd remembered to exhale, there was no rush of celebration, no instant fanfare or blaring anthem. Just a deep, echoing quiet. The boy stood still, hand pressed softly against the animal's neck, not claiming victory, not asking for attention, simply remaining with the creature that had trusted him. Around them, people murmured, confused and fascinated, trying to piece together how a child from nowhere had managed to do what no champion could. The owner, arms stiff by his side, couldn't speak. He had bet $1 million not on the horse, but against the very possibility of connection. And now he watched as the myth of control unraveled in front of him, replaced by something older, more powerful, and infinitely harder to understand. The announcer eventually found his voice. He called the moment, declared it as history, a first, a miracle. Applause began slowly, almost reluctant, then grew like a wave breaking over the stunned crowd. But the boy didn't raise his arms. He didn't bow. He gently led the horse by the mane, no rope, no halter, toward the edge of the ring, each step in harmony, as if the beast had been his companion all along. The gate opened. People pressed forward, reaching out, calling to him, asking questions, shouting offers. Reporters clustered like a swarm, their lights blinding, their microphones intrusive. But he didn't answer. He kept walking until he reached the shaded area behind the stables, where the noise dimmed and the horse could breathe. There, he sat on a bale of hay, the animal beside him, its massive body now calm, at ease, as though all its years of rage and resistance had melted in a single hour. A stable hand approached, slowly, respectfully, offering water and fresh feed. The boy nodded, silent, watching as the horse took both with quiet gratitude. And still he said nothing. Not until the owner came. Red-faced, conflicted, hands clenched at his sides. For a long moment, the two stared at one another. The boy still seated. The man towering. It could have gone so many ways. Accusations. Defensiveness. Pride trying to cover humiliation. But instead, the owner asked, barely above a whisper, "What did you do to him?" The boy looked at the man, really looked, and in that moment you could see the difference between them. One had spent his life trying to control everything he didn't understand. The other had simply listened. After a few seconds, the boy replied, voice soft but steady, "I didn't do anything to him. I just stopped trying to make him into something he wasn't." The owner stared, blinked once, then turned and left. And in that silence, something old fell away. Not just in the man. In the air itself. Like an unspoken truth had finally been given a place to exist. News spread quickly. By nightfall, social media burned with clips and interviews, though the boy refused to give one. Journalists tried to spin it as luck or a hidden technique or some rare instinct. But those who were there, they knew. They knew it wasn't about tactics or tricks. It was about presence. About how the boy didn't see the horse as a challenge, but as a life. And in doing that, he offered the one thing no one else had: peace. Days passed. The arena emptied. The dust settled. The horse, now calm, refused other handlers, refused to eat unless the boy was near. Eventually the owner relented. Papers were drawn. Ownership transferred. Not because of the $1 million bet, but because even a man ruled by pride could see when he had lost something greater than money. And so, the boy took the horse home, not to a mansion or a sprawling ranch, but to a quiet piece of land gifted by a local farmer who had watched it all from the sidelines and recognized something sacred. A bond. A beginning. They lived there, the two of them, in peace. The boy built a small stable by hand. He spent hours brushing the horse's coat, talking to it, not as a master but as a friend. And over time, others came, not to challenge, not to test, but to learn. Not how to tame animals but how to understand them. And as word spread, children from broken homes, people carrying pain they couldn't name, found their way to that farm. They didn't find magic. They found stillness. And in that stillness they began to hear themselves again. He never chased fame. He turned down money, interviews, deals. He never rode the horse in shows or exhibitions. That wasn't the point. He just lived. Quietly. Meaningfully. And every morning, the horse met him by the fence, waiting not for orders, but for companionship. And so the boy, who had once stood in silence while the world measured him by what he lacked, now stood at the center of something bigger, not by conquering but by choosing a different kind of strength. The kind that listens. The kind that sees. And maybe that's the heart of it all. Because in a world addicted to noise, to dominance, to spectacle, he reminded us that the most powerful thing you can offer is understanding. So let me ask you something. What would you have done? If that had been you, standing in front of something wild, something broken, something beautiful and terrifying all at once, would you have tried to control it? Or would you have listened? Let me know in the comments what you think about this story. And if this touched you even a little bit, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Victims of Nature for more stories like this one. And just before you go, I need to be clear. This story is a work of fiction. Inspired by truths, emotions, and the power of connection, yes, but not a real event. Please, never attempt to engage with a dangerous or unpredictable animal in real life the way this character did. These stories are here to inspire reflection, not imitation. Take care of yourself, and remember, sometimes the strongest voice is the one that doesn't try to be loud.